So you want to play 3DS games in your living space from the comfort of your couch, but it can get a bit inconvenient having to work around needing to cope with configuration settings, dual screens, and touch controls. You want immersion. You want the same feeling of ease and convenience that comes with playing games on a console with your 4K monitor and surround sound. But why emulate the 3DS when there's already so many great games you can play on your TV, like Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey on the Nintendo Switch? While the Nintendo 3DS is practically a dead system, you can't forget the great exclusives it had to offer. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time 3D, and Majora's Mask 3D. Great remakes that add a lot to their Nintendo 64 counterparts, both from a visual standpoint as well as gameplay experience. Bravely Default, a timeless classic that feels and looks great in HD. Pokemon Sun and Moon, a game that looks good enough to be on a console on its own merit. Animal Crossing New Leaf and Happy Home Designer, titles in the Animal Crossing franchise that you simply won't be able to play outside of the 3DS. Persona Q2, Hatsune Miku Project Mirai DX, Mario & Luigi Dream Team, Kirby Triple Deluxe, Mario Kart 7, Miitopia, The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds, and Triforce Heroes. So many great games locked away behind the growing obscurity of a handheld that's no longer commercially relevant to the general public. This isn't just a simple video on emulation. I'm pretty sure at least 80% of you watching have clicked on this video because you've either already had experiences successfully emulating the 3DS, or you're just curious about emulation in general. This won't be a quick and easy tutorial on how to emulate the 3DS, but rather how to have the best experience while playing through your 3DS collection on your PC, such as the best controllers to use in order to assure the best and most comfortable experience, a visually clean and convenient front end to launch your games, configurations necessary to avoid immersion-breaking gimmicks like switching between screens or having to use your mouse to click on anything in the middle of gameplay, and most importantly, multiplayer. This way, you're not going through a mess of files just to boot up a game each time, which can often result in decreasing your urge to play as soon as it's booted. It's as simple as booting your front end, using your controller to navigate through your game library, launch your game, and you're done. Hi everyone, I'm UsagiShade, and this is a new series where I'll help you find the current best way to emulate every possible platform on your dedicated hardware so you can enjoy playing your favorite games all over again. Here's the current most ideal way to emulate the Nintendo 3DS. Before anything, here's everything you'll need. The newest version of Citra, which is an emulator for the 3DS. Either the Steam client or Launchbox in order to launch your games through a menu. I'll explain the pros and cons of each option once we get to that. A controller that makes it easier for you to use your mouse without breaking the immersion when playing. I recommend the Steam controller, since it allows you to emulate mouse movement a lot more accurately thanks to the touchpad that acts as a trackball. However, the Steam controller isn't for everyone, and I understand it isn't comfortable or easy to get used to for some people, which is why I also recommend the DualShock 4 as an alternative. Not only is it comfortable to hold, but it also has a touchpad that can be used as a mouse pad, giving you full control at all times. Lastly, your 3DS ROMs are in the format of either .3ds or .cia. I'm not allowed to tell you where to obtain these, but in this case, Google is your friend. If you need personal help with anything specifically, you're always welcome to message me directly via Instagram, Facebook, or Discord. Once you have all that, we can get started. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. For the sake of your experience, I highly recommend to keep your files organized. Have folders and subfolders for your emulators as well as your ROMs in order to locate them quickly and easily. Personally, I have a folder for emulators and a separate folder for my ROMs. Each one is separated by console. Okay, so let's set up a front end. For this video, I'll provide two different options which you can decide to use based on preference. One of them is 100% free to set up, while the other is more of a paid method if you want features like gameplay video snaps, extra visual info, etc. Personally, I use both, but in the end it's up to you and what your preferences are. First, let's start with the free method, Steam. If you would like to skip directly to the alternative method, I'll leave a timestamp here so you won't have to watch this segment. To add a game that isn't part of Steam's library, simply go to Add Non-Steam Game, and then search for the Citra emulator in the path you installed it. Once you have that added, right-click on Citra, go to Preferences, and locate the text box under Target Path. On a File Explorer window, go to the folder where you saved your ROMs. Right-click on the ROM you want to add to your Steam library, and you should see an option that says Copy as Path. This option won't be visible if you don't hold Shift while right-clicking. Once you have the path copied, head back to Steam and paste it directly after the first target path without overwriting anything. Make sure each path has quotation marks at the beginning and end, as well as being separated by a space. For emulation specifically, it's normal to have two paths, one being the emulator and the other being the ROM you're running. Repeat this process until you've added all the games you've wanted to add. Click on the full screen icon at the top right to launch Theme in Big Picture mode. This will allow you to navigate through your games with controller inputs, giving you a better experience if you're playing in a living room setting. You'll find your game in your library, though it'll display as merely an icon of the application you're running. For those of you who don't already have icons made, don't worry. I'll provide a link in the description containing my full collection of Steam icons I've made for countless games. If there's an icon you can't seem to find, either try googling it or send me a direct message requesting icons for those specific games, and I'll do my best to have it uploaded to the collection as soon as possible. To give this game a custom grid icon, select the game, go to Manage Shortcut, and find Change Icon. Navigate to your Steam icon directory and locate the name of the game you've added. In this case, I'm looking for The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Once you've selected your icon, simply exit out of the settings and you're now ready to launch your game. Alright, so now we're going to set up our alternative front end, Big Box. For those of you who would like to skip this method and go straight to the configuration settings, here's a timestamp for you guys. In order to launch Big Box, you'll first need to install Launchbox, which is the base version that's free to use. However, it doesn't come with a navigation menu with features like video snaps or visual artifacts, for example. For these features, you'll need to purchase one of three options, which will grant you access to Big Box. You only need to pay one time in order to keep Big Box forever, so you don't have to worry about having to pay again. Personally, I chose the $20 option, which gives you free updates for up to a year. If you would like to have endless updates, the $60 deal may be a better option for you. Anyway, back to Launchbox. My library contains a ton of games already, though for you guys, it'll most likely be completely empty, considering you haven't added any games yet. To get started, let's add our emulator. Go to Tools, Manage Emulators, and then Add. In the emulator name box, select Citra from the drop-down menu, then point the emulator application path box to Citra's file directory. On associated platforms, make sure that Nintendo 3DS is filled in the box and mark it as default emulator. Then hit OK. To add your ROMs, go to Tools, Import, and then click on ROM files. Just add your 3DS ROM directory and it will begin to scan every ROM in your folder. Once every ROM is scanned, your entire 3DS library should be visible with their box art. If you're unhappy with any of the visual art for a game, or if you'd like to add more to it, you can right-click on any game and select Edit. You're able to simply launch your games from this base page, however, the real reason we're here is to launch them through Big Box. You can either select the menu icon and select Big Box, use the shortcut Ctrl-B, or skip through Launchbox entirely and just run the Big Box application directly. Once you're in Big Box, you should be able to see the Nintendo 3DS category. Your setup will look a lot different from mine, but that's only because I've spent about 2 years or so personalizing my overall library and visual theme. The great thing about Big Box is that you can practically make it look and feel however you want. When going into your 3DS library, you'll see all of your games ready to launch, possibly displaying a screenshot or start screen as their media demo if applicable. I've spent hours capturing a wide variety of gameplay footage for every console, so if you would like to download my video snap collection for 3DS, I'll leave a link to it in the description below, as well as my Big Box configuration file if you want your layout to be exactly like mine. Keep in mind, not every game has gameplay footage yet. I'll be updating the collection as time goes on. Also, some videos are purposely edited as montages to showcase the best parts of the game in my point of view. For my setup personally, I like to keep the video audio muted. That way it's just the music playing, meanwhile the visuals do the rest. This is why montage footage works for my setup, but it may not work for yours, so keep that in mind. From here, you can simply select the game you want to launch and just start playing. Now that we're actually in the game, we can start talking about the controls. Before we configure any controls within the emulator, we first need to make sure our controllers are configured well within the front end we're launching our games from. With Steam, for example, when pressing the home button on either your Steam controller or DualShock 4, a menu will appear, which lets you do a plethora of things, most notably controller mapping. What's cool about the controller mapping feature in Steam is that it's incredibly in-depth. You can configure all sorts of things, such as giving each button multiple purposes based on how it's pressed, adjust haptic feedback, create control sets that change based on what occurs in game, allow your controller to open a real-time keyboard in case you need to type anything, and so much more that I would probably have to dedicate an entire video on the Steam controller configuration alone. Launchbox recently added controller mapping in their newest update, though I've yet to try it out myself. Still, I love Steam's take on it above anything else I've used before, along with Big Box's UI and visual customization, which is why I briefly mentioned that I personally use both when emulating. I simply launch Big Box through Steam, and it allows me to use Big Box with my Steam controller, while also allowing me to enjoy the benefits of the features that are exclusive to Steam. Some games get a pass though, like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Animal Crossing City Folk, since those games have certain controls I like to set for them specifically that don't really apply to other games. Still, I can always launch them from Big Box whenever I feel like it, so it's all the same. Alright, so Citra, let's get the best of what this emulator has to offer. Make your way up to emulation and select configure. If you want to exit games seamlessly, make sure confirm exit while emulation is running is unticked. On the debug tab, make sure CPU JIT is enabled. Then on UI, change the settings to your liking based on personal preference. In system, go ahead and put your username and playcoin amount along with other info. This would let games automatically know your nickname so you won't have to type it down each time. For audio, I have emulation set to HLE and the output engine set to auto. Make sure audio stretching is enabled and feel free to add your mic or camera if you have one. Now, the graphics tab. This is where all of your visual configurations are done. You can adjust how good a game looks based on your settings in this tab. I keep my limit speed at 100% so the game will run at full speed without going above its normal velocity. Have every box and rendered enabled, as well as setting your window size to auto so it can automatically adjust to your monitor's resolution. I have my screen's layout set to single screen, but you don't have to worry much about this one. I'll show you why in a minute. The background color can be anything you want it to be. I have mine set to citrus orange just to fit citrus aesthetic, but I overall prefer black just because it doesn't take too much focus away from the game. Finally, the controls. In the Steam menu, I have my Steam controller mapped as a normal gamepad with a few haptic feedback adjustments added. Since this is the 3DS though, we're going to need extra key mappings in order to make the experience a lot simpler and straightforward. Since the 3DS has a C-stick as well as ZL and ZR buttons, you're practically able to give a function to your right touchpad or joystick as well as all 4 trigger buttons on your controller. For the Steam controller, I have my right joypad set as a mouse joystick, which means it's a normal joystick, but it controls the camera in the form of a trackball or mousepad. You'll notice the Steam controller has 2 grips in the back, which also act as mappable buttons. Set the left grip as F10 and name it Layout Toggle. This is just to change the way the 2 screens are laid out together on your monitor. Lastly, set the right grip as F9 and name it Swap Screens. With this, you can easily switch between the top and bottom screens at any point, which works ideally when playing in single screen mode. If you're using a DualShock 4, the touchpad can function as 2 separate buttons, almost like a left and right click on a mousepad. You can map these two as you would the grips of a Steam controller. There's a lot of creativity when it comes to these configurations, so just have fun with it and see what works best for you. I'll touch more on the Steam input and its expansive capabilities for Citra after we finish setting up the basics first. Once you're in Citra's controller input settings, map each button as you normally would on any gamepad, and the important hotkeys should already be mapped accordingly. If you would like to make any changes or add more hotkeys, feel free to mess around with your controller configuration to whatever is most comfortable for you. So now comes the small elephant in the room, and that's, well, the borders. If you're like me, you prefer 100% borderless full screen. While it isn't accurate emulation, it is a much nicer experience being able to stretch your game to fit the display of your monitor. For those of you who aren't interested in this step, you can skip ahead to this timestamp. This part isn't as direct as one might think, but it's certainly possible. In the future, Citra might fix this entirely and just add a stretched full screen option, but as of right now, there is no sign of that yet. A large caveat when customizing your layout like this is the fact that you aren't able to swap screens or change the layout like you normally could on the default settings. That being said, you can arrange it however you'd like, so don't feel limited to just my methods. I'll demonstrate 2 options for you, both with their own setbacks and advantages, those being single full screen and dual full screen. You can use one for the games that don't rely on the bottom screen, like Mario Kart 7 or 7th Dragon 3. and then you can use the other for those that do, like Bravely Default, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, and Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. You won't have to decide on just one, but rather be able to decide between both depending on which game you're playing. So here's how you do it. Go into your Citra folder, go to User, then Config. Here, you'll find your config file, which will allow you to change your layout however you'd like. I've already made a couple of different layouts, which I keep separated by folder just in case. First, make sure you back up your Qt file in a separate location. This is just in case you mess something up and don't want to harm your original file. Right-click on Qt config and make sure you open it with Notepad. Once you're in, scroll down to where it says Layout. Depending on your resolution, your numbers may vary from mine. My screen resolution is 1360 by 768, but I'll do my best to help you follow along while also considering your personal resolution. Set Custom Layout to True. Custom Layout top left and top should both be 0. Right and bottom will be your screen's resolution. So for me, right would be 1360 while bottom will be 768. For the bottom screen, we want it to display in the bottom right corner, so this is where it gets a bit technical. First, make sure right and bottom match your screen's resolution. Left and top will indicate the dimensions of the bottom screen based on how many pixels you separated from the bottom and right side. The 3DS's bottom screen has a dimension of 320 by 240, so for left and top, you'll want to subtract those dimensions from your right and bottom resolution. In my case, 1360 minus 320 gives me my left, and 768 minus 240 gives me my top. You can make the screen bigger or smaller by adding or subtracting by the bottom screen's simplified dimensions, being 4 by 3. So whether you add or subtract 40 by 30, 32 by 24, or 160 by 20, your bottom screen will change in size without losing its proper dimensions. If you've done it correctly, you should see your layout the way I have mine. For those who want a single top screen, simply change all of the bottom screen's values to 0. For me personally, I like to have 3 copies of my Citra folder and let each one have a different layout. My dual screen layout is named Citra Dual, while my single screen layout is simply named Citra Single. If you want to decide which layout to load when launching your game, you'll want to add your alternative Citra layout as an option. For Big Box, all I did was add Citra from an alternative folder like Citra Single as a new emulator, associated it with just the 3DS, and named it Citra Single Screen, so I know which one I'm launching. I inevitably did this for each version of Citra that I plan to potentially launch. When you're about to boot up a game, select Launch With, and you should see all of your Citra alternatives in a convenient menu. From there, just launch and play normally. For those who use Steam, you can simply do the same exact thing you did to add your 3DS games, except choose the alternative executable. For example, if you want to change the layout for a game you've already added, simply right-click on the game, go to Properties, and change the first target path to the version of Citra you would like to launch with. If you ask me, I'd prefer a method where you can toggle between the two on the spot, so with a press of a button, it could go from this to this. No extra steps required. Citra, if you happen to be watching, please consider this feature. It would definitely enhance the experience more than you think. Before we move on to the last segment, one very important thing is missing that would allow us to change the way we play 3DS on our setup. For too long, many people have been yearning for a way to map buttons to their controller to perform necessary touchscreen commands that in many cases are required in order to properly play a game. It can be extremely annoying having to put down your controller and use your mouse to click on things on the bottom screen. The point of emulation and being able to play comfortably is avoiding minor setbacks such as the aforementioned issue that happens to a lot of us when emulating the 3DS. Thankfully, I'm not here to leave you empty-handed, so worry no further. Today I'll show you how to successfully map any button to any touch command on your screen. Right now, the only way I've managed to make this work is by using Steam Input, so Steam is necessary if you intend on getting this to work. Like I mentioned earlier, Steam Input allows you to get extremely creative with how you customize your controls. One thing that's exclusive to Steam Input is the ability to bind your mouse's cursor position with a single press of a button. Merging this with a left-click release press allows us to click a specific spot on our screen by simply pressing the key or button we bind the action to. So playing the ocarina is as easy as pressing the left bumper. Since you can give each button multiple functions, you can map long press bindings to start and select for actions like opening the gears and items menu, for example. We can finally set our mask to one of the corner slots and wear it on the spot when we come across a certain obstacle like this flower that's only accessible by Link's Deku form. Thanks to this effective feature, playing your favorite 3DS games would be that much more seamless when considering the large amount of games that require basic touch functions such as the ones previously demonstrated. This won't solve every touch-related issue, which is why I still think you would benefit from a touchpad like the ones found in the Steam controller or DualShock 4, but with a bit of time and creativity, many of the problems you had could be solved easily, like using a mouse region to scroll through this minimap and link between worlds, or organizing your pockets in New Leaf by touching and dragging your thumb. Feel free to map these touch bitings to your heart's content, and hopefully I helped solve the really crucial issue that's impeded many of you from enjoying your favorite 3DS games. Alright, we've reached our final segment, multiplayer. So now you're able to launch into whatever game you want and play it without issue. But what about playing with friends? Sure, playing alone can be relaxing and less of a headache, but it can get pretty sad when you have no one to share the experience with. It might seem like a large extra step to set up, but it's surprisingly the simplest process in this entire video. When exiting full screen mode in Citra, you'll notice a tab at the very top called Multiplayer. Now, before we click on that, we have to create our own personal login information in order to play online. For that, go to Emulation, Configure, and in General, you should see a tab named Web. Click on that, and find a small link at the bottom that says Sign Up. Once you've clicked on it, go ahead and create a new account. Once you've finished, Citra will provide you with a unique token, which you'll need in order to verify your account. Simply copy it and head back to Citra. In Username, put down the username you used to create your login. And for token, paste the large code we just copied. Hit Verify, and after a few seconds, it'll say you're verified. Make sure to click OK once you're done. Now, you're able to go into the multiplayer tab and either join someone's room to play with people under that server, or host your own room in order for others to join you. From there, it's as simple as playing the same game and having a good time. I hope this video was helpful to some of you. Emulation can be a very complicated process for some, which is why I want to do my best to get rid of that barrier that prevents those who don't know enough about emulation from trying it out for themselves. Playing a game shouldn't be complicated. It should be fun, engaging, and memorable. If you like this video, I'll consider making more of these for other consoles in the future. Don't worry, they won't be as long or as repetitive as this one. This was just to test out the format and see what works and what doesn't. What would you like me to emulate next? Right now, I'm trying to pick between the Nintendo Wii and Android. Please let me know. I'd love to see your feedback. You can also tell me if there's something you weren't happy with, and I'll do my best to improve upon it. If you're new to my channel, then hey, feel free to check out other videos I've made, such as the top 10 Japanese games for the PSP. If you're watching this on UsagiShade, then consider subscribing to my main channel, iisu, where I'll post a bunch of personal projects like covers and original animation. Anyway, until next time, this is UsagiShade, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.